welcome back to episode 2 of How About Them Huskies podcast, or if this is your first episode, welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Connor. You know me as UConn MVB Updates, and I'm here once again with Matt Sarkis, Matt Morbidelli, and Andrew Arndt. And we're just going to get right into it today. Last night, UConn defeated Buffalo 84-64, and I unfortunately was unable to watch the game, so I'm going to have some of you guys kind of fill me in what happened. Andrew, you want to go first?
Yeah, well, obviously we got to start out with Tristan Newton's first triple-double since Daniel Hamilton in 2015 against Central Connecticut. That was the last time they got it, but a 22 point, 11 assists, and 10 rebound triple-double for Newton. And Dave Borges even called it a quadruple-double because he drew 13 fouls.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And he was 14 of 17 from the free throw line, which is a crazy stat. Out of 22 points, 14 of them came from the line.
Yeah, and I also, for the triple-double, I'm pretty sure I saw it was the 12th in UConn history, which I feel like that's kind of low for some of the guys we've had. So it just shows how cool of a feat it is to actually do that.
It is definitely a low number, but made history last night. So good for him, but man, that game started off rough.
Yeah, I noticed. I was following along. The score wasn't changing much early on.
No.
A lot of missed shots.
We were losing for the first time this season, but we shot 44% from the field, 28 of 63, and then 6 of 23 from the three-point line, which is 26%, which is not great. But I'll let Sarkis get into a couple of details that he saw, too. That was just what I saw. Bad shooting.
Yeah, so there was a slow start, and it took a couple turnovers, and they're pretty unforced turnovers, and we got a couple easy buckets off of it. And I think that's where this team is going to be good, is getting out and running in transition, because they're pretty positionless, especially with Hawkins and Jackson back out there. So it took them to string a couple stops together, get out running. And once they did that, they're able to, get some points on, get a big lead. And one guy I want to point out in specific was Klingon. He had another big night. He didn't miss again. And I wouldn't call it a big night, but his production has just been so consistent. He had 11 points, 8 boards, 2 blocks. So I was calling him for his production to be consistent, and he's done it. So that was another guy who did good. And just another thing about the game was the shooting. It started off really slow too. And once they saw a couple go down, and not by any means was it a good shooting game, but I think this team could heat up, and I would like to see they had one bad shooting game, one good shooting game, then another bad shooting game. And I would like them to leave that in these tune-up games because, that can't be a theme all season where they're inconsistent shooting.
It's just a little side note here. I don't know if it really matters, like a conspiracy, but the first game, Stonehill, they struggled a little bit. XL Center shot really good at Gamble versus Boston, and now really didn't do so well against Buffalo back at the XL. So I don't know if that's really the case, but could be.
I think you're onto something. I think we need to reschedule every game to Gamble.
Yeah. Matt, what do you got from the game?
From this game, for a game that we shot so poorly, and I honestly just thought it was a pretty successful game in every other stat. We shot very poorly, especially in the first half. We shot 3 of 16, which is good for 19%. But Buffalo defensively is a very good defensive team. Coming into the game, they averaged 14.5 steals a game, which I felt like our backcourt and everyone did a very good job at fighting against and sort of being composed. They had a very good composure to them, even though they weren't hitting shots. You could tell that we were the better team, I could say, the entire time. I never really had that doubt. 2 of the guys that they were hyping up were Curtis Jones and Zid Powell for the defensive skills. And, they had a very good game last game. We held them to 4 combined points in the first half, which I thought was a huge difference maker. You got to shut down their best players. And I never saw them had a chance to get going. I thought they were in the game mainly because we couldn't shoot ourselves out of anything. We stood no chance if we just kept taking those shots and missing them. There was nothing coming out of it until we checked in Joey California, and he scored 10 points. He shot 4-6 in the first half, and I feel like him coming in kind of changed the energy. You could just see it on his face. I don't know if anyone else noticed it. He just looked like locked in the whole time.
He's got that swagger in him.
Yeah, I don't know. I really like him. I was watching him and I was like, damn, like he really wants to turn this thing around. He came in, he hit a few threes. He had 10 points in the first half, 2 of 4 from 3, which we really needed to get going. And, when he came in, he started hitting them. I saw the team just flip around and, just kind of follow his lead.
Yeah, Joey, he went 3 for 5 from 3 the whole game. Rest of the team, 3 for 18 combined. So a huge spark beyond the arc when the team was struggling.
Yeah, you need him. You need guys to come in. You need them to hit threes. Not everyone's going to be going every night. But it's also not going to be like last night where nobody else is going. But, big difference maker.
Yeah, speaking of that, no one else is going. I'll pull up some numbers here, shooting wise. Tristan Newton, he had the triple double, but he was 4 of 14 from the field, 0 of 5 from 3. Naheem Aline, 1 of 7 from 30. He's the guy you really want making those shots. Other than that, those are the two guys. Sanogo, 4 of 11 from the field. We'll get to him in a little bit. He didn't have his greatest game, but it wasn't poor by any standards. But yeah, one more positive. The free throws. They went 22 of 28. That's after I believe 50-something% maybe against Boston. So that's great to see an increase there. Let's keep it moving to Sanogo. Anyone have any comments about his game?
Yeah. I want to talk on that. So last podcast, I remember saying where Sanogo needs to improve is passing out of a double, making the right read out of a double. And that's where that's where he advances. And I remember saying he made a nice pass out of a double against BU. It looked like something new. I think he'll be able to do that this year. And he actually didn't have a single assist this game, which, he's our best player. And when your best player is getting doubled, he should end up with an assist or two. And he was doing that thing where he just forces up shots. So I think that needs to be addressed. How do you address it? I don't know. I'm not a basketball coach. I talk about it. But I think that needs to be addressed. And it was kind of what we were seeing last year with him. And he needs to get a little better with that because when you're being doubled, someone's open.
Matt?
Yeah, I contribute a lot of this game to just this unnecessary foul trouble he dug himself into. It doesn't help when you're out for the first 10 minutes of the second half. I felt like even though he didn't have the best stat line, I felt like he was productive. I don't know, just his presence on the court kind of changes things, especially when Buffalo had Isaac Jack out there a lot, the big man. I don't know how tall he was. I think he's 7 foot, 7'1". He looked really close to clinging out there, but he did a very good job containing Sanogo around the rim. And I don't know, he hit a 3 again, which I liked. I don't know. Overall, kind of meh performance. You want to see more, but not too much to complain about besides the foul trouble.
Luckily, I think this may be one of the worst performances we'll see from Sanogo, which is actually a really good thing. And also, one more thing on that. He played 22 minutes, Klingon 18. That's the full 40. So even though Sanogo struggled a little bit, Klingon picked it up with his 11 points. So they combined for 22 and 14, which is exactly what you want out of your center for a full game, scoring and rebounding. Keep it moving here. As you all know, there's tough injuries right now. Jordan Hawkins, Andre Jackson, and Samson Johnson are all out. And I have some tweets here from Dave Borge. This was from Monday before the game. It said Hawkins was close to returning today. Jackson may be cleared for live play tomorrow, which is today, and both possible for Friday versus UNC Wilmington. And Hawkins had increased his workload. Jackson was close to going live, and Johnson, quote unquote, weeks from playing. So all of them have different timetables as of right now. Andrew?
I think we're going to see Jackson back. What's today? It's Wednesday. So he'll be back Friday against UNC. I think we'll see him back for maybe 15 minutes or so. Maybe we'll see Hawkins for 10, but we'll both see them starting and being productive against Delaware State on Sunday. But as much as this really sucks to say, I don't think we're going to see Samson until conference play.
Yeah.
And that really hurts to say.
Yeah. Seeing A boot means it's probably worse than we initially thought. So
Yeah.
yeah, conference play month away. I feel like that's a realistic timetable. Matt Sarkis.
Yeah, if we could just get Jackson Hawkins back for the Phil Knight Invitational and they're ramped up at that point, we could pick up some big wins there. So that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely see at least a combination of the two. Hopefully both of them before that starts. Because we have two more games prior to that. We'll get to that towards the end. And let's see. So some of our non-conference foes that we're going to be facing, Oregon, we're going to be facing out in Portland in the PK tournament. We have that. We finish off that home and home with Florida and the Big 12 Big East challengers, Oklahoma State. All those teams have already suffered some pretty bad losses early on. You see Oregon losing to UNC Irvine. Florida lost recently to FAU. Shout out Jalen Gaffney. And Oklahoma State lost to Southern Illinois. So do you guys think that's really going to matter? Seeing we have like our non-conference like top guys that are supposed to get us in the tournament with our good non-conference slate. They've already suffered some bad losses. Andrew.
It's definitely like not great for if we want to move up in rankings, but nonetheless, I mean, tournaments are always tough. You could take a D2 team in a tournament and they could win the whole thing. It's just about how momentum goes. So I think losing these like for a team like Oregon, I think losing these games is not really that much of an issue. But for a team like Oklahoma State, for when they're coming to a packed Gamble crowd, I think that's really bad. If they're losing to someone like who are they, Southern Illinois,
Yeah.
That's going to be tough for them playing in Gamble against Connecticut. But then for a team like Florida, playing in Gainesville is never easy. So I think that might have just been a bad game for them. But still, definitely things for Hurley to look at and look at their weaknesses. There's plenty of film probably from those. So it's good on a film standpoint, but it doesn't mean those are automatic wins because they're far from that.
Sark.
Yeah, well, the thing about a tournament resume is you want those quad one wins. And I think if we were to play Oregon or Florida before then, or Oklahoma State, or Oklahoma State, if we were able to play them like next game, it wouldn't be a quad one win because they had some bad losses. But the thing is, Oregon plays number 3 Houston the game before us. So if they could win that, that would be big for us. It'd mean they're a good team, so it'd be a tough game, but that'd be big for us. And that's also wishful thinking that they win that. And Florida plays Xavier before us and FSU, but FSU doesn't really count. They're bad. But yeah, so they have a chance to redeem themselves and maybe they can make it so it's a quad one win.
Yeah, it's a good point. Those net rankings are always changing. You could be top 5 and end the year in the 50s. It really depends on the whole year. I touched upon Jalen Gaffney playing for FAU. So we'll go to the next segment here. There are 6 former Huskies that suited up in Storrs that are still playing in college. And we'll start out with Cook, Andrew. How's he doing?
Cook is doing great at Georgetown so far. He's played 3 games. He started off real strong, 18 points, 12 boards, and 5 blocks against Coppin State. And they're shaky. I watched that entire game. That was a shaky game, but they ended up beating him, which is all that matters. But he had a couple of down games. He played okay versus Northwestern last night, and then he played decent in their second game. He's averaging 10.3 points per game, 1.3 assists, and 7.7 rebounds with a 68.8 field goal percentage. So he's doing pretty good there. He's starting every game. And now that Samson goes down, it kind of hurts that he left because he would definitely be in his spot right now. But, he's getting more time at Georgetown, but I'm happy that he's succeeding there.
Yeah, I'm certainly happy to see all these guys that transfer out having success. I don't want to see anyone fail, but especially a Cook. I don't know. It's just part of me. I just really liked him when he was at UConn. He stuck with it. So
he's gone through so much with the injury against Memphis. He was NBA talent in his freshman year until, like, if you go back and watch those games with Florida, I think Cincinnati, USL, like those games, he was showing that he was NBA talent after maybe 2 or 3 years. But then that tough injury against Memphis set it all back and just never the same after that torn Achilles. But I'm happy to see him succeeding at a different school for sure.
Definitely. Sucks he's in the Big East as well because we got to play him twice a year. But it's also cool to see him. He'll return to, I believe they're playing at Gamble this year, Georgetown. So I'm sure the crowd will give him a nice ovation there.
I'll definitely be there for that one. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to another player that transferred out last year, Jalen Gaffney. Sark, how's he doing at FAU?
Yeah, well, he's having an all right year. He's definitely seen a minutes increase, a production increase, I wouldn't necessarily say. I remember he had a solid freshman year for us. He was pretty promising, and I was excited about him. He didn't really have much of an incline as a sophomore or junior, but right now he's averaging 6, 2, and 3 assists on a 2-1 FAU team and picked up a big one against Florida, and he played a lot of minutes that game. So, I guess he's doing his thing over there. And I don't know how far he's going to go with his basketball career, but it's nice to see him, who I thought was going to be promising, have a big role, a veteran role on an all right team.
For sure. All right, moving on. I know I mentioned before this segment that all these players suited up for the Huskies in the past. This next guy really didn't suit up. Corey Floyd. He was a redshirt last year as a freshman. He transferred out. Matt, how's he doing in Providence?
Corey Floyd hasn't had much of an impact over at Providence at all. He's played 7, 8 minutes a game. He's only played in 2 games so far. His first game, he shot 1 of 1. He had 3 points, turnover, and then in the second game, he shot 50% and gets 1 of 2, and had another 3 points, another turnover. His playmaking hasn't really been there at all. He hasn't had any assists this season. 2 rebounds, hasn't gotten to the free throw line. Hit a 3, first game and the second game. That's his total points. It's 2 3-pointers. But yeah, not much to write home about here for Corey Floyd. Providence seems okay. They're 3-0 right now, but yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of how he acted over the off season, and probably won't be for the rest of his collegiate career, to be honest.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. He sat the whole year on the bench just to transfer. I'm sure there's stuff behind the scenes we don't know, and there's something maybe Early told him. It's also just at Salt Lagoon, and he goes to one of our biggest rivals in Providence. I believe he has family ties there, and that's why he went there. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I'm actually headed to Mohegan Sun this weekend for the tournament, the Hall of Fame tip-off. They have Providence. They're playing Miami. Then they play the winner or loser of St. Louis, Maryland. So maybe he'll get in, have an impact there. It'll be good to see.
Yeah.
And next up, I'll take this one. It's Brendan Adams. He transferred out 2 years ago. He's now at George Washington in the A10. And he's actually having a really good season to start the year. He's averaging 14.7 points and 6 rebounds, and that's in almost 35 minutes per game. And he's shooting pretty well, 50% from the field, 47% from 3. And he was another guy. He didn't really have a big role on the team, but he had his impact. I remember especially that game, I believe, against Cincinnati, at Gampel. He was a part of a big run to put the team back in it. I think it was like a 10-0 run. He hit a couple threes. He always had that spark off the bench. And also another player that transferred out. He played a little more than Floyd. He played like 1 game as a Husky, Javonte Brown. He's now at Texas A&M, and he's not doing much either this year. He only appeared in 1 game out of their 2. He scored 4 points and 6 rebounds in garbage time. And that was after last year. He actually made a couple of starts, the 7-footer. So yeah, not really too much emotional attachment to Javonte Brown, but not the same could be said for Brendan Adams. And there's one more here. I'm going to go Stark back to you. Rasul Diggins, former top recruit.
Yeah. Speaking of not much emotional attachment, let's talk about Rasul Diggins. He didn't see much playing time as a freshman. You saw like a minute a game. I don't know what he averaged, a point. And he transferred out to UConn's less successful little brother, UMass, where he's seen a big minutes increase. He went up from 5 minutes a game. So I guess he averaged 5 minutes a game at UConn to 17.5. And he's averaging 4 points and 2.5 assists, which is it's like solid production for a young guard. And he's seeing big minutes. And yeah, it's just another one of those guys out of that convoy of guards who transferred out. I really wonder what Dan Hurley said to the guards. Maybe it was something like, I'm bringing in 4 talented guards out of the transfer portal, but yeah, it's peculiar.
Definitely. Peculiar is a good word for it. Let's move on. We got kind of not a weird schedule, but early on to play 2 games in 3 days is kind of out of the ordinary, as opposed to playing you play that many games in a like a multi-team event like the PK tournament. We got a game Friday versus UNC Wilmington, and on Sunday against Delaware State. And UNC Wilmington, they on opening night they played the number one Tar Heels. They actually played them pretty close. It was like a 2 point game at halftime at Chapel Hill. Ended up like a 10 or 12 point game. And Delaware State, I don't know if you guys saw, but they were actually up at the half against Nova a couple nights ago. So 2 games we probably should win, but also 2 teams that have shown they can hang with some of the best. Andrew?
Yeah, I was definitely gonna say that is don't take these for granted though, because as we've seen with the 3 losses with the teams we play next and even Nova lost, anything can happen in these we'll call it practice or tune-up games. Like UNC Wilmington, 8:30 at Gamble, they're gonna be coming ready to play. And we can't take these ones for advantage because these are ones we start out 5-0 going in that tournament. We should be in the top 20, I'd say, by that tournament, which would be pretty huge. And by the way, for the tournament, I saw we have 5-1 odds to win it. And that's the third best out of the, I believe, 8 teams that are in it.
Yes, I have the odds pulled up right here. North Carolina is top, and then us
Yeah,
and
of course.
Alabama are tied for next best. Then it goes Nova, Oregon, Michigan State at sixth best odds. I don't know when these odds came out, but I feel like they
But
just
after last night, yeah.
they just
Ooh.
beat Kentucky last night, and they play Gonzaga really close. So I
They'll
would
move up for sure.
definitely. Matt?
The 5-1 odds for us to win the tournament. I mean, I don't know how likely that is to happen. I don't know. I feel like a lot of our guys come in, they're brand new. They're learning how to play together. The one thing that is carrying over with me the most from last game is definitely how together they all were. The togetherness for a team that has not really played together at all is a big, big Dan Hurley thing. Dan Hurley loves to get these guys riled up. So yeah, I mean, as long as they stay together, we get some more production from some guys who haven't really shown it yet or have struggled. We see the talent is there. We see everything's right in front of us. We definitely need to sink our threes. That's for sure. Winning this tournament is realistic, a realistic thing, but we definitely need more production from guys who have not yet shown it.
Yeah, in a tournament like that, you see the name like UNC number one in the country. Some people might not want to face them, but I want to see how we match up against Carolina and see if we can beat them and how close we play them. So, yeah, Andrew, add something?
I was just gonna say, yeah, like for a tournament like that, like it's really a thing for these guys to really get used to playing with each other. They're going, where's the tournament? It's in Portland, Oregon. So they're going all the way across the country with each other for the first big tournament that they're playing in together. We need a guy like last year, Pauly off the bench in that Auburn game. He dropped like 27 points, put that thing in the double overtime. We need somebody like that. If somebody's clearly struggling, we need somebody off the bench, especially if we have our team almost healthy besides Samson. Like if Andre is struggling there, we need somebody like maybe Calcaterra to just come in and get a couple of threes or something like that. We just need people off the bench who can, like get the game back in order if it's going off kilter, because some of these guys aren't going to start. Like Naheem might not start. Diarra definitely probably won't start, so we're going to need these guys to come off the bench and provide a spark.
Definitely. And this is kind of sidetracking a little bit, but say we'll consider Sampson out for like a month or so. When Andre and Hawkins come back, who do you think are obviously Sanogo is going to continue to start, and I assume Newton will, but who do you think is going to get that last spot? Sark?
I think Eleen's probably gonna get that last spot. I don't know why. Probably because he's just a bigger guard and he could space the floor. And I think we're just gonna run like a 4 guard, one big lineup. So I think Eleen's probably gonna get the last spot. And he's a mature guy who he was a starter on that Virginia Tech team last year.
Matt? What do you think?
I think it's all dependent on how these next few games go, to be honest. I don't think Hurley's locked into any lineup or any guy at all. I think he's just going to go with what he sees. If he has to run some players out of position, run Jackson out of 3 or maybe even a 4, the way he bounces is just ridiculous. I could see that happening. Get a guy like Calcaterra at the 2 to maybe get up shots like more often. And if Newton's having a stinker, put him on the bench for a little bit. I think he'll start initially all the games, but I don't know. This team gives me very, very come and go vibes. Players will come, they'll go. My prediction though is also a lean. Stick him in at the 3. Very versatile player, very versatile defender, which we haven't talked about much, but yeah, a lean. He needs to start, score more points, score more buckets. But when those come, then I don't see how anyone can get by us.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Jackson at the 4. I think that's definitely a possibility. He's like 6'6", very lengthy defender. He gets a lot of rebounds. It's almost like a point forward the way he handles the ball. He's a very versatile weapon for the team. Andrew?
I would say that once both of them come back healthy, I would say that the 1, 2, and 5 spot are pretty much a lock with Newton, Hawkins, and Sanogo. But, if Caravan is feeling himself these next 2 games, really see what he's got. Put him in, start him against Oregon in the first game at the 4 and put Jackson at the 3. But, if he continues to struggle, like he struggled a little bit in the Buffalo game, but he got a couple to fall eventually. The nice one in transition after the Klingon block and the assist from Newton. But if he's got it, it's all going to come down to Hurley's decision because it can't really be decided right now with 2 games to go before that tournament. But it's definitely a wild card, and Caravan could definitely earn that starting spot.
Yeah, I'll get my input on the last starter real quick. I do believe it will be Naheem Aleem just because of, like you guys mentioned, that veteran presence and also including Jackson's ability to play the 4. So let's go to the players to watch for these two upcoming games versus UNC Wilmington and Delaware State. My player to watch, I'm going to go with Naheem Aleem. He had a kind of a stinker shooting the ball from 3, 1 of 7, like I mentioned earlier. And he played 38 minutes. So if you're playing that long, you need to be able to make, I think, 3 or 4 threes at least if you're out there the whole game. And luckily, we also touched upon last time, he had 0 rebounds and 0 assists the first 2 games. He had 3 and 2, so he's on the board in that category. But yeah, I'm going to chalk up last game as just like I'm just going to forget about it. People have their bad games, and hopefully it's past them and he improves this weekend, headed into the PK. Sark, who's your player to watch this weekend?
My player to watch, especially against Wilmington, is probably going to be Adama Sanogo, considering they did a good job. I was looking at the box score. I didn't watch the game because that wasn't really on my list. But they did a good job guarding Armando Bacot, who arguably the best big man in college basketball. So I want to see if Sanogo could come in here and have a big game against a team who locked down arguably the best, or didn't lock him down. He had an all right game, but played hard against the best big man in college basketball, and we could see how Sanogo stacks up against him.
Definitely. Matt, who you got?
My player to watch for opposite reasons is Hassan Diarra. Diarra played 16 minutes last game. He only scored 3 points. He's a big non-factor. I think if he wants to earn a constant rotation spot, Hurley talks a lot about we have these guys playing who aren't necessarily going to be playing when we're entirely healthy. I think that's a direct Hassan Diarra reference. He hasn't impressed much in his first few games. He has to come out. He has to have some pretty solid games coming up in order to, solidify a spot in this rotation. And if he does play good, maybe that'll cause a little bit of controversy in the backcourt.
Andrew.
I'm actually going to take Joey California as my player to watch because I saw a lot of what I liked in that Buffalo game. He came off the bench. Obviously, we were struggling 3. He wasn't afraid to shoot it, even though he I don't want to say he hasn't been great because he's been fine, but definitely hasn't been what Pauly was last year, which is fine, first 2-3 games. But he came in, sunk 2 threes, got the crowd fired up. And then I liked seeing him take it to the basket because I thought that he was just going to be primarily a perimeter guy, but he took the ball to the basket last night, which is what I really like to see. And I think he's definitely a guy who can provide a spark off the bench for us if we really need it. So he's my guy to watch for these next two, especially heading into the PK tournament.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen the box score, 32 minutes. I believe Diarra, he was in some foul trouble, right? Yeah, that's why he only had the 16. But I don't think you're not going to see Joey Calcaterra 32 minutes every night. But it's good to see in those extended minutes he had that great production. And we're going to wrap up here soon. I have a couple of just quick notes. It's not really a big deal, but third straight year we're in the top 25. It's kind of a cool accomplishment seeing where we were in the AAC. Any comments on that, anyone?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say we are way past the days of Sidney Wilson's and guys like that being big impact players for us. I love the guy. He was one of my favorites when he was here just because of his pure athleticism. That shot he hit against Wichita. But I mean, you can't have him started, to be completely honest. I don't know where he went, it was not even close to the level that UConn's on. But I mean, those players that we had during those years, honestly, were very, very big for our program. Jalen Adams of the world, Christian Vitals, all three Gilberts. I mean, I don't think we are where we are now without them. And, coming into the COVID year where Vital was the leader of that team with Book Knight and all those guys, even a Cook, that team, if that season didn't get delayed, I feel like that would have been a great year for us. I feel like we definitely would have made it to the first round of the tournament. I feel like that kind of set us back. But yeah, I feel like going forward now, I feel like we should be ranked every year. Hurley's a good enough coach to get us there. I see no problems going forward.
Yeah, back to that 1920 season. I was at that game against Houston that senior night when they pulled off the upset. I think number 21 Houston. I thought for sure we were going to go on a run in the AEC tournament, and less than a week later the season's just over. So that was unfortunate. And also, Adama Sanogo won Player of the Week in the Big East, which I'm not going to say that's expected, but he had a couple of great games, especially against BU. And Alex Caravan, Freshman of the Week. He had a couple of good games as well. Anything on that?
Yeah. Thing about Caravan, he's just so solid for a freshman. He's a really mature player for a freshman. And he's just gonna be consistent for us, even if his shots aren't falling. He's just gonna be consistent. He tends to be in the right place, make the right rotations, and he'll probably give you good 10 a game because he's super under control. So that's just how I feel about Caravan. And Snogo is great too.
For sure. All right. Do you guys have anything else? I think that pretty much wraps up. Andrew, you got something real quick before we end?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've been a real big fan of the freshmen this year as opposed to last year. Obviously, very deep team last year. Guys like Sampson weren't going to play over guys like Whaley and Pauly, and then the guards weren't going to play over RJ and Reese, and Hawkins obviously won that freshman spot. But these two so far have been really special. And I think this is really showing Andre Jackson's quote, only the strongest survive after they lost 8 players. Obviously, some graduated, some for the draft, but more importantly, 4, I believe, transfers from last year.
Yeah, 4 people transferred out last year.
But that's definitely showing only the strongest survive because this team looks like their chemistry is already really good, and they look like they're going to make runs this year and be one of the best teams in college basketball. So I've really liked what I've seen this year from the team. I'm really excited for this next 2 games and then into the tournament, which I think if we win that makes our confidence go up 100 levels.
For sure. Matt, last thoughts here?
Yeah, I was just going to react to something that Andrew said about the 4 transfers. There were a lot of questions, over the offseason about whether, this is an issue on the inside, a coaching staff issue, a player issue, whether or not they got along. There were a million questions. And I don't know, I found myself getting upset about it. I found myself wondering, where they're going to go, if we're even going to compete at all this year. Because when you have this many open spots on your team and this many open scholarships, you really wonder about how much quality you can get in when, recruiting's over and you're left to your devices, just transfers and, picking up who you can get. And I feel like Hurley has done a fantastic job at just bringing in the necessary pieces to compete. I don't see any weak spots. I'm going to be honest. The shooting comes and goes. They're college players. They're not professionals. You expect them to hit their stride. And fall out of it. The good thing about them all being sort of out of it now is that I plan for them to hit it at the same time. And once they get into a stretch where they're all hitting, it's going to be a great sight to see. Yeah, basically, just I applaud Hurley for the guys he's brought in, the versatility he's brought in. I feel like he's just done a great job building this team.
Yeah, it hasn't looked perfect so far, but it's been pretty good, pretty damn close. So I think that'll do it for episode 2 of How About Them Huskies. Thank you guys for tuning in, and you can look for another episode Monday recapping the 2 games this weekend. All right, thank you.